We're going now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome, Rick. Welcome, Lauren. We want to welcome Dr. Lauran Star
Yeah.
and my co host, Rick. We're
Hi.
going to be, I would like to actually introduce, hey, we're trying really hard here to not start mid sentence,
Right?
to be a little more structured. So
Yeah.
allow me to follow my structure today,
Okay.
please. So
Okay.
I would like to introduce Dr. Lauran Star. She's the first inclusion diversity psychologist in the United States. She's known for transforming leadership or organizational culture to achieve greater employee engagement, culture, and evidence-based inclusion, diversity, and equality. Dr. Starr holds a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, specializing in inclusion, diversity, and equity. She's an award winning and international best-selling author and well known media expert. She's also a
Uh-oh.
veteran of the United States
Wow.
Armed Forces, serving in Desert Storm, has a learning disability, and was raised in a multicultural family. Prior to her corporate life, she also performed on and off Broadway. Oh my God.
Forget D&I. D&I. Let's just talk about Broadway, shall we? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see why I had to like prepare all of this and I could not possibly remember all of this, but I want to welcome you to the show, and I am so impressed by your background, by the diversity, to say, within topic of your background and all the different things that you have done in your life. So I cannot wait to learn a little bit more about you, to hear how you got here, and to hear about the work that you do.
Yeah.
Awesome. And thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone out there that's tuning in. Yeah, it's great to be here. So let's just dive right in, shall we?
We
Yeah.
could. And this is the part. There's a couple of things that really struck me, particularly in your bio. And I've been on your website, and I encourage people to go to your website to really delve into all the things that you are doing and all the work you're doing. But there's a couple of things. One is this notion of you are the first inclusion and diversity psychologist. Like, is this?
Mhm.
I'm curious. Is this like a new branch, or how did that evolve?
Yeah, so it falls underneath the umbrella of uh, organizational development. So it falls underneath the IO psychology degree.
Oh,
And my specialization is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that, right, when you finalize your PhD, I'm a psychologist that is, right, that my specialization is workplace inclusion, diversity, and equity. And I was surprised that there was nobody else out here that was doing this. And I'm quite honored that I'm the first one to carry the PhD under that umbrella.
oh,
And I haven't seen a whole lot coming through since then. It's a lot of work to get it. It's more than a certificate in DE&I. It's really evidence and research based.
okay. So did
So
did you end up having to do more of your research to bring that together, or
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So from the get go, right in actually, it started in my graduate course. Every paper, everything I was writing on was DE&I based. So, we've got a compilation of hundreds of papers that,
Mm,
are all evidence based, which is nice.
yeah,
But, what I do with that, and more importantly, okay, whoopity do, what do you do with that now?
yeah.
So I work with an organization, and I've worked with other organizations. I head up their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and strategic planning. I think people, when we think about DE&I, we think it's just going to happen, and it doesn't just happen. So there's a lot of companies out there, which was really surprising, that are saying that they're doing DE&I, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're falling
Mm.
quite short. In fact, I saw one study that reported like 19% of the companies are actually have a strategic plan in place, which is really shocking. And they're focusing on diversity, which is the wrong thing to focus on.
Gotcha. So just so our audience is clear, because I know I know I come from a medical background, and lingo and
Bingo.
shortening things is very like confusing, can be, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes DNR means something different for other people, so you don't want to, so when you say what you're basically saying in the D&I, you're talking about the diversity and inclusion,
Yes.
right?
And equity.
And equity, that's the E component. But more specifically, because I don't think we've done it, well, I can speak to that. There hasn't been a ton of research done in the equity framework in a corporation. Looking at inclusion and diversity from that evidence-based lens is critical, and really level setting. So for your audience that's tuning in, diversity truly defines, so all that you know about diversity, put it on the side burner, because the true definition of diversity is taking affinities and breaking them into affinity blocks, right? So affinities are what make us unique, right? Your religion, your gender, your sexual orientation, your veteran status, your disability status, your ethnicity, all of that combined make us unique. And the goal of diversity is to have different perspectives at the table from our lived experiences. So that's the goal of diversity. That's it.
Right.
Inclusion is where it really matters. I like to think of diversity as like, it's so focused, or companies are so focused on quota attainment.
Yes.
Diversity by itself creates an us versus them workplace. And I come at DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, from a pretty unique lens, in that I was exposed to inclusion in the late 80s, early 90s, right when I was in the Army. And we have what I call today forced inclusion, right? The Army didn't go about trying to set this culture up. It was kind of like, all right, you're a trauma medic, they're trauma medics, figure it out. Figure out what's going to work best. Listen to each other, right? Like, you're a team. You have to have each other's backs. You need to support each other. That was part of just basic training, right? There's that mindset that everyone around us brings something to the table. That's, that's inclusion.
Yeah.
Right. And in the military, it's this forced inclusion. And then I got out of the military, and my first position, it was like, well, there's a glass ceiling here. And I'm looking around, I'm looking around. I don't see, like, what do you mean there's a glass ceiling? If there was a glass ceiling, I could see up people's skirts. Like, it just wasn't connecting, because I came from the military where yes, I'm a female. That didn't mean squat, right? It didn't get me out of going to the front line. It didn't get me out of, trudging across or hiking miles with, somebody on a stretcher. It didn't matter. So I get out into the workplace, and it's like, okay, well, you're also a woman. I'm like, well, thank you. And there's a glass ceiling. And I'm like, there's no such thing as a glass ceiling. It's a scapegoat.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't good old boy networks out there. Of course there are, right? Similarity biases, we all have them. However, when it comes to that whole glass ceiling and buying into it, and I'm going to tie this all up here in a second, I think, maybe not.
We'll see what happens.
Right, we're just going to keep going here. But right, we to tie it all together. If you're tuning in right now and you're going, oh, I have a glass ceiling, here's your choice: shatter it or leave the company. And if you can't do either, then you're part of the problem.
Right.
And I think that, right, and I think that's trickling into diversity, right? That we see that, like, okay, if you feel that your company is holding you back because of your affinities, you have a choice. Report them and quit, right? Report them, fix it, stay and fix it, or report them and leave. You have a choice there. And trust me, that's hitting organizations where it hurts, because it's expensive to replace talent.
Yes.
It's expensive. And if you're focusing on just the D, if you're focusing on just diversity, I can almost guarantee that you have a revolving door of talent. You're going to hire diverse talent who are not going to stay because they don't feel like they belong to the organization or belong in the organization. I hate the word belonging. part of inclusion. I don't know why we have to separate that out, but yeah.
You know, I was in an organization a few years back that, you know, part of I'm in Canada,
Mhm.
just for some clarification, because your laws might be slightly different, but we were also being legislated into diversity, right?
Mhm.
So they were looking into organizations and basically saying, you don't have enough of this culture. You don't
Mhm.
have enough, you know, and I'm going to throw a lot of labels around, but you know, like there's not enough women in your
Yeah.
organization. There's not enough indigenous
BIPOC, POCs. Oh
all
yeah.
those things, right? And so it turned into, okay, now we must meet a mandate now of having, you know, 30% this, and you know, that kind of a thing. Do you come across that in your work, that people, the organizations feel like they're doing something, but it's not really
It's not really doing anything. Yeah,
not
that's like that's like the whole, you know, that's what the kind of the whole book is about.
mm,
In that we have affirmative action. And it's a hot button right now in the
okay.
US, affirmative action hitting the Supreme Court, where it's all quota attainment and percentages. And, you know, we're kind of, what, it depends on who you talk to, right? I am against affirmative action in the sense that it did what it was supposed to do in the 80s, but we never went back and revisited it and changed it as globalization took place, right? In the
Mm,
80s, we
Mm,
didn't have globalization. We have globalization now. You have to have a diverse workforce
right.
if you want to sell to anyone, right? There are customers, right? That's part of, but affirmative action didn't keep up with that.
okay.
So there's a lot of organizations out there that are like, oh, we are extremely diverse and we're hitting all those quotas, right? We're attaining those numbers. But then I sit down and I look at their turnover rate, and yeah, it's great that you're diverse, but your turnover rate is high. You know, anything above, for me, anything above 13%, I consider a decent turnover rate.
No
And
kidding.
you're losing your talent because you don't have inclusion.
Mm,
So, right. Affirmative action kind of, well, it didn't kind of, affirmative action pushed us that way, where we would look at an employee or a college student that was marginalized,
Hmm.
and that seated doubt is there, right? Are you
mhm,
here because you're marginalized,
mm,
or do
Yes.
you deserve to be here?
Yeah. And I
right.
That's what
agree.
affirmative action has done.
Yeah.
And it's right, whether that's college or whether that's business.
Yeah.
Right, we start now talking about tokenism, which, you know, a lot of people are, oh, we're not talking about tokenism, but yet there's a lot of companies out there that will put women or people of color on boards and they have no impact. Right, well, we've got a woman on the board, we have a person of color on the board, right, we have a Hispanic or Latino on the board, we've checked that box, you know, and then you talk to the board members and they're like, yeah, I get, you know, talked over, you know, I come to the meetings, there's not a lot that I can share, whatever I
Mm.
get shared gets the, you know, nobody hears it or some, yeah.
So
So
then what you're saying is that they're not necessarily being inclusive of that person,
yeah,
or that they're not necessarily the right person for the job, right? It could be
exactly. Could
both
be
ways,
either
right?
or. But what, right? And that's what I go, okay, so what was the agenda of the organization in hiring this individual? Did you want someone that's going to shake it up? Or did you just want a body and a warm body and a seat to check the box?
Right.
And
Yes.
it's interesting. I get both responses, but I get a lot of, I want that. I just want a warm body to check the box and we'll look at implementation later. And I'm like, you're wasting all this money. That's crazy.
Well, not only that, and I also have experience in the first responder field,
Hmm.
in firefighting and in EMS. And you know, and I found, you know, particularly the the guy culture. And when women started to take an interest in fire service,
Hmm.
there was and I and it's like, yes, okay, come on in. We need the diversity, right? We're being kind of, criticized for not having, all this kind of stuff. But I'm also thinking of the pressure that we put those people in, that we've hired them to match our checkbox. Now they're put in a position where the bias is there, right? The bias is there. You're just there to be that token person or whatever, and now they're put in a position where they have to prove themselves constantly. And I cannot imagine to be put in that position, like, to show up at work constantly under that radar, under that microscope. And wow, I mean, wow.
But you also feel like that you didn't quite earn that.
Yeah.
That it had to do with those boxes that were being checked, or those things that make you unique. They're not necessarily your skill set, right? That have to do with your race, or, with your color, or with your gender, or, your sexual orientations, frankly, right? These days too. So it's, and I'm not saying that it's not important to be inclusive of all of that. I'm just saying that that shouldn't be what makes you qualified for a position.
Yeah, right. We should be looking for talent, the most talented. And if we're inclusive, if we've created an organizational culture that's inclusive, you will attract diverse talent. Trust me, word gets out. You want to work for this company because they're amazing. I mean, I used to work for Johnson & Johnson, my favorite company of all time. They are the most inclusive company I've ever worked for. Right? It's not lip service. They are all over inclusion, and they have found through that inclusion, right, they attract the best and the brightest, especially in diversity, because employees that are going to work for them recognize that I'm going to be heard. I have a seat at the table. I have value, and they're going to utilize that value instead of putting me in a box. And a lot of companies, we put employees in boxes.
100%. Yeah.
And that's frustrating as heck.
Yeah. No, so that's interesting. Okay. So, because you're pointing to something that intellectually we might understand, but intuitively we kind of are going against it, because so what you're saying is, if we just focus on talent, the rest of it seems to fall into place, if that's truly what we're focusing on.
If you focus on culture, if you focus on your organizational culture, the talent will come, right? If you build it, your employees will come.
Yeah.
And that's just, and that, right. And that inclusion, right? So you mentioned, Rick, being a firefighter. So thank you for your service there.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank everybody. Let's have cake. It's a cake moment.
Can I have some cake too?
Absolutely. We'll give you some cake too.
For everybody. We'll be Oprah. You get a cake. You get
a cake. Oh, I love that. Yes. But in the Army, when I was going through trauma medic training, right, we had to do so many push-ups, so many, right? And the Army, much like firefighting service or the police force, they have two sets. They have the male requirement and they have the female requirement, which is done because we have very different muscle groups.
Right.
That inclusionary lens, trust me, when it came to, hauling a 270-pound guy out of a tank, it was never just me doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that's no one should do that by themselves.
No,
should be 2 people to 3 people lifting them out, not just one. There's your inclusion. In firefighting, right? I used to tease adjunct faculty over at one of the local universities here, and we get a lot of firefighters through there. And I used to say it all. I'm like, hey, if my house is burning, make sure one of you big guys comes and gets me, because I'm a big girl, right? I'm like, I want somebody to carry me out. And they were very quick to be like, oh, but you don't need us to carry you out. She can just put you on a blanket and pull you out, right? Yeah. So it's that automatic Like, okay, how do I get this done? But what you're not seeing is somebody coming in a wheelchair that wants to be a firefighter, because that's physically impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as long as you can do the job, regardless of your affinities, right? But we want that talent. What we don't want to see happening is meeting someone and saying, oh, wait a minute, you hit 3 of our diversity buckets. Yeah, you've got a spinal injury, but we're not really worried about that. One of the guys will pick up your weight. No, that doesn't work. That's setting everybody up for failure.
Yeah.
That's such a good analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well, not only,
that.
And I like how you're really differentiating between diversity and inclusion, because I think some corporations or organizations get the two mixed up or think they're both the same.
Oh, they all think it's the same. I like to do the I'll throw out bags of Skittles at people. Partially, I just like to throw things at people.
Okay, cool.
Right. But if you take a bag of Skittles and you rip open that bag of Skittles and you break the Skittles into color groups. So you got a yellow group, a red group, a green group, a purple group, an orange group. That's diversity. As soon as you break them into groups, that's diversity.
Okay.
That is diversity. Inclusion is when you put them all back in the bag, you shake up the bag, you pour 3 in your hand and you pop those 3 in your mouth. You're getting 3 different flavors mixed together to give you a new flavor. That's inclusion.
Gotcha.
I love that.
Love that.
Right?
There's a soundbite, Fatí. There's a soundbite right there.
Right, exactly. And you follow it up with, so taste that rainbow.
I love it.
But that really is what inclusion is, right? Is that you get a different product because everybody's coming together. I talk about the lipstick industry. You know, lipstick is the #1 selling cosmetic of all brands. Women love lipstick, right?
Looking at a drawer in our house, I believe.
Right, yeah. But here's the thing. Back in the 60s, when it was predominantly men in the workplace, what are we calling that? Male? Oh, I got to figure out what I'm going to do a poll on that later. Anyways, I digress. But yeah, so in the lipstick industry, when it was all men, there were 2 colors in the 60s. There was that baby pink, right? And that June Cleaver wore. And then, right, it was that soft mauvey pink. And then there was that real red that the evil women on TV wore.
Yes.
You know, yeah, like, yes. And that's really, you look at the 70s, same thing. But in the early 70s, one large manufacturer brought women into R&D. And that's diversity. It became inclusion when one of the men said, so what do you like about lipstick, seeing that you wear it? Now we have millions of different colors. We have lip stain, we have lip gloss, we have matte lips, we have lipsticks, there's so many different varieties and colors and what are they meeting? Yeah, because of inclusion. Right? That's bringing in and asking and embracing and putting into play what they're hearing. That's inclusion. Yeah. If you just brought those women in and didn't ask them or didn't listen to them, we'd still have those 2 colors, June Cleaver and evil woman.
Evil woman.
I may belong to the 60s.
Right? Exactly.
I do only have 2 colors in my
I'm like those, and I couldn't wear either color either. I'm like, so the red has too much orange and the pink just isn't pink. It's just not for me. Yeah. I don't do pink. So yeah.
So do you mind telling us a little bit what got you into this line of work? So like we talked about your background and like all of these diverse experiences that you've had. So do you want to speak to some of those? Because I'm so curious.
Sure, right? Sure. I am very much of the mindset you live in the moment and you only have, right, this is it. You got your one life. And I'm one that just likes to explore everything and a natural curiosity. I see the wonder of the world of a 5-year-old. I'm always looking around, and you just see different things. It's awesome. You know, when I think about my path to the military, that was because of theater. Yes, I was on and off Broadway, did quite a few shows there, then joined the military, then got my degree, and trucking along, just picking up things, and like you uncover unique talents that we have. Like I have incredible organizational awareness, always have. I can go into an organization and I can tell you what's wrong with the organization within a day. And I'm spot on. Like I just have that. I can tell you the direction they're going. I can lay out who they're going to buy. I should probably trade on this information, but I don't. Right. But yeah, so that like I have that organizational awareness, and I have this more so now. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I was figuring out who I was. By the time I had my kids, I knew who I was. And I refused not to be who I was or who I am. And that is someone that I like to shake trees. I like to make people uncomfortable. Right. And that uncomfort comes growth. I'm pretty happy there. I like to, right. I'm that person. If we're friends on Facebook and you post something stupid, I'm coming at you. I'm going to let you know that that's stupid. And when I started my consulting firm, it was actually my executive leaders that I was working with. They were like, you need to be in DE&I because it is such an area that we need people speaking out. Yes. We need people that have no problem going, I get that you're doing it that way. However, the evidence shows. So that's really how I ended up in the DE&I space. It was a very natural slide because of my diverse experience, right? I mean, I've seen a lot from that DE&I lens. I've seen people not getting hired. I've seen actors or actresses not getting the roles they want, or getting the roles that they want but they don't deserve. I've seen that, right. And then I have to rationalize that and put it into blocks for myself so that I understand it. And DE&I have no problem speaking out. Have no problem speaking out. And you know, you either love me or you don't. And I'm okay with that. I'm like, I'm okay. You know, it's so funny because I speak all over the place. And that is one thing I give my audience permission not to like me. You know, I give that, hey, some of you are going to love me, some of you not so much, and that's okay. But a week from now, 2 weeks from now, think about what I spoke about and ask yourself, what was your takeaway? And as long as you took something away, then this was successful.
Yeah.
And if you didn't take something away, that's on you.
And that's sometimes, you know, creeps in, like, you know, the personal biases. I know part of like when I do workshops and things like that, I ask people right in the very beginning to park anything away. Like you're like, just listen, like listen like you would listen music, where you don't judge the music. You're just listening, because if you're here to, oh, I know all about that, or I've heard this before, that's just affirming your own knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. And you're not going to go anywhere if all you want to do is just confirm that I already know that. Right. We want to get comfortable with the unknown.
We want to get comfortable with the unknown, right? And that's the uncomfort, that really is that uncomfort part.
That's what stirs with people up, right? And this is what you do. Like you poke them enough to make them uncomfortable and say, look, yeah, you're uncomfortable, but we can make it comfortable.
We can make it comfortable. And there's tools and tips and ways to do that, especially around biases or microaggressions. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's what I get paid to do. So I like it. It's good.
I just the way you said that, I like it.
I like it, right? And I think, you know, that's that other side to it, is I don't know everything. I know more than the average, but I don't know everything. So there also has to be that component of listening and learning from those around you.
Yeah.
And I do that every day, right? Yeah. Because I can empathize with anyone, but I'll never fully understand their lived life experience.
No. No.
Right.
Like, there's no way I can physically walk in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
I can empathize.
Yeah.
But to fully know that, yeah.
And that's an important thing too, because I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I my approach has always been to seek first to understand, like Covey, right? And like, I get it. Like, help me understand what your culture's about. Like I don't pretend I know everything about this service or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand, like, how are you seeing your culture right now? How are you seeing your organization? And then
Mm-hmm.
it's just a question of comparing notes, because I'm not gonna, it's like, I'm not here to correct. I'm more here to connect. And then when we connect, then we can work together inclusively.
Yeah.
Yeah, buzzword, eh?
I like it. It's catchy. It's catchy. We are 98% alike. Our affinities make up 2%. We are 98% alike.
No,
But yet we want to fight over the 2% that we're different.
Oh,
That's so interesting.
It doesn't make sense. Like, I have to take a step back. We're 98% alike. Focus on that, right? And that 2% is that lived experience that helps create new products or new solutions.
yeah.
But we're more alike than not. But yet, like I said, that people want to focus in on that 2%. And then for me, it's such a hot topic right now, because now that, let's talk about racism in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put this out here. There should never be racism in the workplace. If there is, you should fire that individual. Have a nice day. Don't let the door hit you in the butt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, so why are we now saying that, we have racism in the workplace? You have microaggressions. Let's solve those. But if they become racist, you get rid of the person. Like,
yeah.
I think it's pretty black and white there, but what do I know? I then get an email. I'll get an email later being like, "You sad," and I'll be like, "Yes, I did. And I stand by
that." But you're absolutely correct. I mean, like in this day and age, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that have creeping up. And you see this happening. We've tolerated things for such a long period of time, and now they're kicking us in the butt because they're not working anymore. Like this attitude is not working, and we need people like yourself to infiltrate some of these organizations, kind of a thing, and say, I may not have all the answers, but we can certainly point in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're globalized now. Catch up.
Yeah.
Right. We businesses work in a transformational lens, right, where the relationship is important. It's no longer transactional, but yet we still have quite a few companies out there that are very transactionally based and treat their customers from that transactional lens. And then they say to me, "We don't need diversity." And I'm like, okay, so you'll be out of business in the next 5 years, because people like to buy from people that look like them. Mm-hmm. We all have similarity bias.
Yeah.
If I was, a woman of color, I would want my financial advisor to be a woman of color, right? Because we have a shared lived experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's you can put your head in the sand all you want. It's upon us.
So what gets like, people approach you, like organizations approach you. So when they approach you, what is their motivation behind it? Like is it the same? Do they find that they are hiring you for one reason, but end up that it's actually something, you're actually working on something totally different than what you were originally hired for, kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much right. I always tell my past clients, I always tell them that, your symptom is not your problem.
Oh, we've heard that.
Right? Your symptom is not your problem, especially in the workplace. So if your symptom is high turnover, that's not your problem. Your problem is either your culture or your leadership. Why, right? People leave culture and their leadership. They don't leave for pay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So right. So then I've got to shake that out. Often I would be hired to come in and they'd be like, well, we just want to improve our diversity in leadership. So I would take that call, go in and meet with them, and then tell them I don't work on diversity. I work in inclusion. And here's the business case behind that. So yeah, but it's the symptoms that we get brought in for.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, and you know, I apologize for my fellow consultants, not for myself because I didn't do it.
Okay.
I am so funny. But I do apologize, right? Diversity was the hot word. Then inclusion became the hot word. Then equity became the hot word. Now it's belonging and workplace racism are the hot targets, but everybody's going at them the same way.
Mm.
And I'm like, those are, 4 or 5 different topic areas with different goals, different initiatives, different ways to measure them. So which one do you want to focus on? Because we cannot focus on all 5 at once.
No.
Do it.
No. And still have a bottom line.
And still have a bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, Rick, and I'm not sure where equity fits in with all of this. I'm deep in research on that right now.
Okay.
What that looks like in the workplace.
I've struggled with that myself because mostly because of the organizations I have worked for, and because I never saw equity as far as pay for service, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
A problem when it came to like being a paramedic or being a firefighter. I was in the logging industry. You basically got paid whatever that job was.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a first class captain, that's what you got. A paramedic gets, regardless of your race, color, or your gender, you got paid that, right? So there was no of that. Where I saw the challenge of equity was in the inequity of opportunities.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, things like what we talked about earlier was like, oh, there's nobody of this gender in the boardroom.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of a things, it's like we don't see, like the old boys club kind of a thing,
Yeah.
Right or wrong. I mean, I'm a firm believer we all do what we think is right in the moment, and that's just happens how it all turns out. But it ends up coming full circle, like you're pointing out now, like cultures or the world changes. And if we are not changeable, if we're not manable, if we're not, have that plasticity within our own organizations, we're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
So, like, again, like, is it true equity, or is it just equity in certain areas?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, right, from that diversity lens, or looking around the boardroom and saying we don't have a woman on it, or we don't have a person of color. Look, up until 10 years ago, it was acceptable. Like, I was like, okay, I get that. White men were in the workforce first. Right? We all have to catch up. You have to have those skill sets to take on that role. So now we have a plethora of individuals out there that have the talent and the skills that can fill those positions. And organizations need to have intent to find that person, right? But we're still talking about a highly skilled individual to fit that.
Yeah.
From that equity lens, I keep going back and forth on the fact that we live in a capitalistic country. We're not socialistic here. We're capitalist, right? That do we have equity in the workplace? Where do we want equity? Right? Equity was created as a legal term. Where do we want that equity? Do we want equity in salary? Now, we've heard that drum's been beaten to hell. I'm a woman who would say no.
That's an
I don't
interesting
want
point of
you,
view.
I don't want you to say that if the three of us are going for the same job, that all three of us would get paid the exact same. I have a lot of skills. Rick, you have a lot of skills, right? You have a lot of skills, right? We should be paid for those skills. We should be paid for those skills. And if you don't know how to negotiate your salary, no one is forcing you to work at that organization. And if you don't know how to negotiate your salary, I mean, I think about my first job out of the military. Military, there was no negotiation, right? You got paid on your grade level. That's it. Have a nice day. And for the year that you, I mean, it was, yeah, right. That was equity. That was equity and salary right there. I didn't make a dime more for being awesome, right? Or for having extra skills under my belt. Didn't make a dime more for that. What, right? That wasn't seen as a value. I come out into the working world. My first job, I was making 38,000 base, which I was pretty happy with, until I went to a training meeting and found the gentleman sitting across from me as we were drinking beers, informed me that he was making 48. Same commission structure, same car, same expense account, right? Everything is the same, except he's not really that bright. And right, like I kind of like sat back. I was like, they're paying you $10,000 more than me. You have zero medical. Like, it was not an easy position. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're gonna make it, right? And when I went to my manager, I was like, what the hell? How come they're making 10 grand more? And my manager said it. Did you ask me for more? What? Did you ask me for more?
But would you say that that's necessarily true for everyone's situation?
It is for a lot. It is for, yeah, right? I didn't know I could negotiate my salary at that point. You got to be kidding me. I could have asked for more and you would have given it to me. I'm like, and I'm asking for more now. And as my manager said, now you've got salary compression. Sorry, not sorry. You're never going to make that back.
There's another term.
Right. And I was like, I lasted at the company 1 year. I was like, well, then I'll blow out my, my bonus numbers, but then I'm out of here. I'll go to another. I've never been paid less since that learning. I know to ask for 20% more. My daughters know to ask for 20% more.
That's a good tip right there.
They'll never be underpaid because they have no problem, and they have no problem with going in the interview. It's not just asking for that 20%, but it's then saying, I'm worth this 20% because of all of these skills that aren't necessarily on my resume. And that's now knowing your worth. If we have salary equity, then you're never going to know your worth. And I have a lot of skills, right? There's a lot of skills we should get paid for.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there shouldn't be an equity in salary, whether you're a man or a woman. There should be, the salary should reflect your skill set.
It
no
should
matter
reflect your
if,
skill set.
Yeah, but do you think that that's a realistic, is that what the reality is?
That's what right. Our reality is what you make it or what I make it. My reality is exactly what I make it. So yeah, that's my reality. I get paid on my skills. And if you don't want to pay me on all the skills I bring to the table, I go elsewhere. It's right. This is a job market where it really is it's up to the employee. I mean, it's a great job market in that sense. So I think we need to, right, we need to stop blaming and start creating solutions. And yeah, ask for more money. Know where your strengths are. Know where your strengths are. Know where your value lies. Yeah. From that equity lens, I don't know what it's going to look like in the workplace. I'm still playing with it.
Well, I think you're bringing up a really good point, because to me, is like you said, it really starts here. It starts with me, and when we start pointing out, the reasons why, right, we're really pointing back 3 times as much back to us. Right? I think when we realize that like the shock of, you mean I could have asked for more? Right? It's like that's a wake up call, right? I mean, what is the worst thing going to happen? They'll say no. Oh, okay. It's like,
What's the worst thing? Yeah, where I was, yeah. And I've spoken with other women that are like, I was just glad they were going to pay me. And I'm like, what?
yeah, no, it's
Like,
interesting, eh? Interesting.
no, like everything's negotiable.
Well,
Everything.
Fatí and I have talked in the past. Fatí's got a background in fashion and interior design.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
Well, I'm gonna ask.
That whole
I know,
equity
but there's a huge culture right there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about competition and equity.
Yeah.
You're a woman. This is what your role is. That kind of stuff. And then there's also this thing called unions. And I'm not,
Yep.
I have, I've belonged to unions. I've been on the other side of management with unions, and and they bring challenges along with it, because in a union environment, it is all about, you're doing that job, everybody gets paid that job, regardless of what your skill or whatever you're bringing to the table.
Right. Tends to make everyone the same.
Everybody does the exact same. And what happens when that comes into play is complacency.
Right. Or some people are just carrying the weight for everybody else.
Why should I do anything extra? I'm not going to get paid for it.
Right.
Oh, I've heard that.
Right. That's it.
Oh, I know. And then they don't have an argument. Like you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. I was involved in, like I said, I was in the logging industry many years back, and one of the things that attracted me to this particular company was that they were doing something called gain sharing, which is a form of profit sharing, but it was gain sharing. So as the company gained, the organizer or the employees shared in the gain, not in the profits, but in the gain.
Okay.
So there always had to be improvement year after year.
Yeah.
So there was an incentive that way. But the other thing I liked about it was, even though it was a union environment, they got it so that they started to pay for your training. So if you started here on this one machine, and you learned how to do this other machine, you actually got extra money, because now you've taken extra training.
I like that. Yeah.
So you were paid for your skills. Even if you took a first aid ticket, you got extra money. So there had all these little incentives that were brought in, and everybody, like, the whole atmosphere was incredible. Like, you talk about inclusion, like I remember the very first board meeting. You might laugh at this. So they said, okay, we're a team now. We're all going to make good decisions together, kind of a thing. And the first decision was whether we should have donuts or fruit in our meetings. So, and everybody's going, oh, wait a minute, I thought we were going to talk about profit and loss statements and things like, it's like, oh, no, you sort of.
I love it.
It didn't start off well. It ended well, but unfortunately, when the organization got bought out, a new set of culture came in, and they said, why are we paying these people more for doing what they should be doing in the first place, making us money? And so they took the whole thing out, right? And of course, morale.
Absolutely.
Everything went backwards. People were leaving in droves, taking early retirement. So I'm curious, what is the key message that you would love to share to get people to point in this direction, like even just to look at it, like open up the box a little bit?
Yeah, I focus on your culture first, focus on inclusion first, and the rest will come. Like that, can't say that loud enough. Focus on that inclusion first and build that inclusion up. I stop throwing, and that's what organizations have been doing, is they're throwing every D, E, and I initiative they can think of at the wall to see what sticks. And when that happens, your employees get to a point where they're like, this is just another check the box. Like, there's no follow-up to this, which is why I say, focusing on that inclusion first, building up that inclusive organization, and don't be quiet about it. That's, you want everybody to know what you're doing in the DE&I space. And we're working on inclusion first. And here's the business case. And here's why we're doing it and how it's going to impact the employees. And it takes every employee to build an inclusive organization, right? It's not yes, it comes from the top down, but it's not a true leadership initiative. It falls on everyone's shoulders.
Yeah.
And what would you say on a personal level? What would be like a suggestion that you would give, given your diverse experience, how you got here on a personal level? And we heard like always negotiate. That's a
right.
really
Always negotiate, my friends.
Right.
Always negotiate.
Right.
I love to negotiate.
20%, 20% up.
20%, right? Drink red wine. That's good for you. But my other tip is, and I have it right here. It's so funny, but journal.
Oh, I love it.
Journal.
Love it.
And it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be a 4-hour journaling episode. Anytime I have an unconscious bias pop up in my head, right? And that's a thought. It's just it doesn't mean I act on it, but I could be in the food store and there could be a family in front of me that may be Vietnamese and something will pop up.
Yeah.
Right? Something may be along the lines of, oh, look, the whole family has to come food shopping. Right? I mean, that's an unconscious bias rearing its head.
Right,
I'm not going to act on it, but when I get home, I write that in my journal. In food store line, Vietnamese family, this is what popped up in my head. And this was my response to that. How did that make me feel?
Right.
And then I do is it true or false? So now, and I write all of this. I don't type it in. I write it in because when you hand write something, you activate your reticular activating system. And that's like a big no, you gotta use pen and paper. And it
I love you.
Yeah, but it'll file it away for you so that the next time I'm in the food store line and there's a Vietnamese family in front of me, instead of my brain going to the unconscious bias, they all have to shop as a family. Instead, I've created a pathway that goes, that's not true. Here's the truth. And it replaces that unconscious bias.
I love that. That's such a good tip.
And it really takes like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And we all have biases. We all have unconscious biases. No matter how much studying, learning, exposure, you're still going to have them, right? But you've got to figure out a way to navigate around those. And
not judge them, and not beat yourself up and judge them and feel bad about it and feel shame around it, right?
And prove it wrong. Do the research on your own. It's not, I'm not going to burden that family. I did think about chasing them out and being like, why are you all shopping together? But I didn't do that.
And well, there's a couple of things, right? You don't have to act on every thought, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But I love the attitude around discovering. For me, it's always an exploration. Yeah. Like so I encourage my clients and to explore, like experiment, like, because it's through experience that you're really going to discover it. Like I could tell you till the cows come home, but until you actually experience it yourself. Like I was surprised myself when I was looking at biases. I knew a few of them, right? Confirmation bias and a few of the other ones, and then I started like researching. It's like, holy moly, there's a lot of biases. And I'm starting to read that and go, got it.
Yes, well, also known as conditioning, right? Because that's what biases are.
But it's
right?
all
conditioning, just so that people understand what we're talking about, right?
But it's such a fun subject. Like, like we can be light about it. There's like, oh yeah, well, we all got it. Like you said, 98% of us, of us we're all the same, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, thankfully, you know, it's actually a skill to be able to recognize that that's a bias, right? Because
Yeah.
if I have that thought, look at the family, they all shop together, and it slips my awareness,
That's
that's
not
a
going to
lot
slip your
worse.
awareness.
Right.
No.
Your
Right.
facial expression gave it away. That is not going to slip your awareness. Awareness. Yeah. But yeah, whenever you have that thought that makes, thoughts that make you go,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
then
Right.
that's what you want to be writing down. And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
Right.
So now I actually know I'm going to have I know it's coming. I'm like, oh, let me tune in and see what my brain says.
Yeah.
And then I'll write it down. I really will write it down on pretty much anything until I can get to my journal if it's not with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to remind myself to
it
address
is
it.
a really good exercise to again, it's that exploration piece, right? And just notice, right? Noticing is is really the key piece. I go for a walk every day, and I know we're kind of getting off the subject a little bit, but I notice that I see the same people, but I have different reactions, and I'm going, that's interesting.
That's it. Why do you have that reaction?
Yeah. Like,
See
why
how you
today?
journal it.
Why is it now that I don't want to meet this person, but yesterday I wanted to, kind of a thing. So what's really going on, kind of a thing. And it's sort of like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm not in a great mood or whatever. I
But
don't.
it's always kind of pointing at something that you need to notice, right?
Well, it has nothing
It's
to do with
always
the person in
telling you
front of me.
something.
Oh
It
yeah.
has nothing to do with them. It has to do with you and what you need in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And this is when I tell people, yes, it is about you.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad
It's
news.
about you.
Yeah. It always is about us. Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah.
So it's just tuning in.
Yeah.
What an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I
you.
feel like I learned a lot today. I knew it was going to go like this. I was like, I'm just going to listen and learn, right? Listen and learn. That's kind of the purpose of us. Like we started like booking in a lot of guests so that we can diversify our conversations, be more inclusive
I love it.
of other opinions, right? Of, like, just be challenged in this back and forth that Rick and I have, and like bring in other opinions, look at things from different lenses, just get different perspectives and learn where we don't know much about it, right?
Yeah.
So
that's it. That is it.
Yeah.
Look at the world with the wonder of a 5-year-old.
Right.
I think of my kids, they have the wonder of a 5-year-old. Even now, one's in college, 2 are going to college next year, right? Be curious. Be curious.
Yeah.
Always ask the why.
Yeah. Yeah. It might drive you crazy. Well, no, for like I remember young kids. Why is the sky blue, Dad? Why? Like
I remember those days.
Why? Right?
And you're in the middle of something really like complicated. It's like, why is the sky blue? I cannot answer that question with patience right now.
That's it. I'm like, yeah, there you go. But yeah, and if you ask a lot of why questions, I'm finding with my own kids, because they're curious by nature, they're all going into engineering. So I'm like, there you go. Why? And there,
I'm reading
we're gonna do this problem this way, and my daughters are like, why? I can do it that way. It's faster, which is good.
I'm reading a bit of a book on Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh.
And it starts off prior to him sort of being in existence, where for 200 years, I believe is around the 15, 16 hundreds, nothing ever happened. There was no inventions, there was no progress, there was nothing really fresh and new that was happening. And part of that was the culture around religion. Religion was not condoning free thinking.
Nope.
And if you thought that the world was round, you were basically persecuted, and that kind of thing, right? So there was not a lot of things happening for almost 200 years. And then guys like Leonardo came in, and one of the biggest qualities that all of these people that have really moved us
Mhm.
out of that was curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
It doesn't kill the cat. Really
No,
doesn't.
no, that's just a rumor.
That's a rumor. That
That's
is
a
a
rumor.
rumor.
I like that.
I love
Rumor.
it.
Yeah,
I
curiosity.
love it.
It's a really, and it's we all have it. It's part of being a human.
Absolutely.
Right? We all have that natural curiosity, but I think we're conditioned to squash that curiosity and take things at face value. Hence the lacking of critical thinking skills that we're
Yeah.
seeing.
Yeah. It's
Right?
too
Is that
much in
people
the unknown. It's too
aren't
much.
right. They're following a news broadcast and they buy it completely, and it's like that wasn't even real. Like
Yeah. That's how easy it happens.
that's
And
how
there's,
easy. Yeah.
with the way we've got things set up now, it really is hard to, and this is where I think where you come in and your service is so vital, is just to point people, like you said, let's start looking
Mm-hmm.
hard at your culture and being honest and ask the right questions. Why is this occurring? Why is this really happening? Get down to the levels of the source. Like I
Mm-hmm.
call it going upstream. We can play and try and save all the drowning people, but we've got to figure out why they're drowning in the first place.
Yeah.
And
Right.
why are they jumping in the river?
That's the question.
That's the
That's
real question, right? Yeah. Hey, thank you again. Thank you very much.
this was my pleasure. Thanks for
Absolutely.
having me on. This was so
I
much
hope you
fun.
had some fun.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. I love that word. Yeah, this was fun.
We had so much fun.
Yeah.
So before we conclude, I'm gonna post in the chat the website, how you can get in touch with Dr. Lauran Star, where you can see the replay on YouTube, on our podcast. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, so that we can amplify our message and bring on more and more guests like Lauran.
Yeah.
That can help us see things from a different perspective and understand, and now you know that you can ask for more money, women.
That's
Go
ask for
for it.
more money.
20%.
That's ask for more money. You should put me in a car dealership. I rock it there.
Yeah.
There
Oh
you
no.
go. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Well, thank you again.
Amazing.
I'm going to hit that magic button and